and on YouTube Live, so it'll make it a lot easier for me to edit.
Okay, cool.
So we'll start out. I like to receive a drop from each one of um, the our guests here on the podcast, and so it basically consists of you introducing yourself. So, hi, my name is Meryl Hoffer. You kind of describe your profession, and then you say, and you're listening to the Mental Breakdown podcast. So, are you comfortable with that?
And you're listening to Mental Breakdown. All right, let me write that down so I don't screw it up.
Okay, sounds good. Whenever you're ready.
Uh, all right, so when do I start?
Whenever you're ready, and action.
Hi, I'm Will Meyerhofer. I'm a psychotherapist and former attorney and author, and you're listening to the Mental Breakdown podcast.
Wonderful. Simple as that. And you are one of the very few that can get that on the first try without breaking down breakdown. So,
First take Meyerhofer, they call me.
yes, I appreciate that. So, if you were able to review the questions that I sent before, awesome. If not, totally fine. But the questions I'm going to be asking today range from your personal experiences with mental health, what you do for your own mental health, what inspires you, and then mental health as it concerns the legal profession. So, we'll jump into the first part of it, and I'll ask, what do you personally do for your own health and wellness?
Well, personally, wellness-wise, it sounds stodgy because it's not terribly chic right now, but I just do fitness training. I lift weights and I do cardio exercise. I'm also concerned just about my health. I have a condition with high triglycerides, so I actually attend groups with people to try to keep our weight down and eat right, and that supports me. And I try to eat right and do all that kind of stuff. I also have a support group with colleagues. We get together and talk just to support one another. And I love Zoom groups. I'm kind of addicted to Zoom groups. I love getting together with people and just talking and supporting one another. I find they're a terrific way to sort of check in with each other.
All right. Well, you were breaking up just a little bit, so you couldn't hear the last part of what you were saying. So if you,
Okay. I actually participate in a bunch of Zoom groups. I have one with some colleagues. I have one with some other people who around fitness and health and diet. I have a condition with high triglycerides, and so I meet with some other people with the same condition, and we try to just be concerned, with supporting each other in health and wellness. And it's actually been a great help. I'm a big Zoom group fan. I guess during COVID, we all started to discover Zoom groups.
well, that is really awesome. And you have a similar. Let me see. Oh gosh, lack of words. But simply put, I had interviewed an attorney, another attorney yesterday, by the name of Mike Franzen. And so he actually does something similar for his health and wellness, just uh, uh, participating in Zoom groups, walking with people in his neighborhood. So it's just interesting that there was a correlation between you two. And I heard, just as you were answering, that you do a lot of things with groups. And so with that, is there anything that inspires you along the lines of health and wellness? Like, is it the people around you that kind of motivate you to continue on, or is it kind of inner motivation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, I do love groups. I actually came to psychotherapy through the group psychotherapy approach. I was very inspired by groups. When I was in law school, they at NYU they had a psychology department. Actually, through they had free group therapy available, and I just walked. I signed up and went into a group. I think it ran for 10 weeks or something like that. It was available to all students at NYU, and that's actually how I became a therapist, as I just love the idea of people sitting in a circle and sharing and supporting each other. So I'm a huge fan of groups. And I think there's a real, and I think this might be COVID related, but I feel it. I was just talking to another colleague about this. There's a real need for connection out there. People are kind of reaching out and forming support groups. The 12-step movement, I think, is absolutely wonderful. There is a support group out there for just about anything. Any people with children of alcoholics, people with problems with substances, problems with eating and food. I think 12-step is wonderful, and 12-step and online like Zoom and so on go hand in hand. They work. It makes it so easy to find a group online, press a button, and bang, you're in a room full of people who want to listen and support you. So that's great. I'm also a great reader, and I'm a huge fan of the arts. I've been around the music world for years, so this might sound odd, but I go out probably 5 nights a week sometimes and hear live music.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, theater. Tonight I'm hearing a concert. This week, every single night, I think 5 nights, I'll be out hearing live music. I have a lot of musician friends, artist friends. I collect art. It's one of my interests. So I love the arts, and the arts are, for me, a wonderful, wonderful way to sort of, it's funny, people toss around the term mindfulness, and I always laugh that for me, it's more about mindlessness, because it's less about being mindful and present and more about getting out of my head and kind of getting, lost in a book or lost in a piece of music, or kind of, even working out or doing cardio exercise, taking a run, kind of that wonderful feeling you get when you've almost been meditating and disappearing to somewhere else. And then you kind of snap back into reality and realize you've got a break from it, And I get that from a piece of music or even, an art exhibition or a night of theater, or, hitting the gym, frankly. But stepping out of yourself, kind of getting away from the work me and getting into kind of a more personal me is a great way to renew.
Oh no, agreed. And something that you'd mentioned when it comes to just groups and the immense need for not teamwork, but being surrounded by people that share your experiences and maybe even share your diagnosis is especially comforting and assuring, because it just reminds you, or at least normalizes what you're going through. And so as a psychotherapist, a question that I had that's kind of off the list of questions that I had sent you, but something that's just entered my head is a lot of people, when it comes to therapy, hold a stigma, of course, against it, and feel that in those types of spaces where you're confiding to a group that most of the time you don't really know, so a group of strangers, you're confiding in them about your diagnosis, about your health problem, maybe even about your personal problems, is kind of like a invasion of privacy in some ways. So how do you deal with, how do you deal with people who have that sort of mindset?
Well, I participate in 12-step groups, and what I love about 12-step is they have the traditions, and one of the traditions is a rule that it is anonymous. They usually have anonymous in the name of these groups, and it's there for a reason, which is the understanding is, I'm trying to think how they phrase it. They say basically, unless you brought it into the room, don't take it out of the room. So you go in there to the sacred space of strangers. I mean, you get to know them, but you are sort of strangers. You're there for a reason. You're there to share something, and you do it in that space. And when you're sort of in that bubble, you get your work done. But then when you leave, it's understood that it's anonymous. Like I'm actually sort of dancing around the fact that one of the traditions is that I don't identify the group that I go to, because that's one of our traditions. I think the actual procedure I'm supposed to follow is that I say a group for people who share my issue with food, and that's all I can say, because for that very reason, it operates independent of me. I don't represent it anyway or anything. I'm just a participant, and I'm anonymous. In fact, early on with Alcoholics Anonymous, they actually referred to the members of a group as anonymouses. Or I think that was actually, if you read in the Big Book, which is one of the early texts in Alcoholics Anonymous, they refer to, I was out with some other anonymouses. So I'm an anonymous.
Well, I mean, that is something, and I'm glad that I'm sure that there are a lot more spaces out there where you can be anonymous and still speak transparently. But I just wanted to ask that because the one of the pillars to this podcast is breaking down that stigma when it comes to mental illness, and so just to address that one facet of that stigma that specifically surrounds therapy, I just found that to be interesting and to be timely.
We do certainly. I mean, I agree with you around the stigma surrounding therapy. I studied with Lou Warmont. He was one of the sort of early leaders in the group therapy movement. He was an older man when I knew him. Louis died, But Lou actually started programs in schools, and I strongly support this. I think it's a wonderful idea, which is that literally even in middle school and in high school,
Mhm.
they will have a group as part of the curriculum, and the kids will sit in a circle, and they will do group therapy and or Ormondian group therapy, which is kind of a wonderful group therapy technique. And I think what you'll find is that it's maturational, and you have it addresses things like bullying and
Yeah.
sexism and racism and all these bad isms. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. Lou felt very strongly that group therapy would be wonderful in any setting, with elders, with kids, there's never, it's always a good idea for us to get support from one another. And if you create this circle of people where they have a safe space to share, I think it's just, it really is what got me into therapy. I love it. And I love psychotherapy. I have a hard time even talking about the stigma because it's hard to take it seriously. I mean, why on earth wouldn't you want? We all want a place to talk, a place where we feel safe and can share and talk. Everyone needs a good talk, right? A good chance to
Yes.
call out. I think we know intuitively that if we had a place where we could sit with someone who really cared and really was listening, it would be wonderful to get everything said, wouldn't it? Of course, it's healing.
It's true. And that's actually interesting to hear from a psychotherapist that he doesn't even care to address or concern himself with the stigma, considering it's something that really we all need is a safe space. Um,
Well, I'm
you
also
know,
gay. I'm a gay man, and I guess I grew up with the stigma around that, and I have a hard time taking
okay.
that seriously either, right? Yeah, exactly, right? I think being gay is wonderful, and being anything is wonderful. Anything, if you love somebody and you're in a relationship, and it adds so much to your life. But for a long time, that was supposed to be stigmatized, And I have a husband, and I have a child,
Yeah.
this is all stuff that I guess used to be stigmatized.
Right.
But sometimes I think if you just go, as they say in Yiddish, fah.
Right. And at least in communities of color, I feel like it's less of what is it, the activity in itself, like therapy, or the diagnosis itself, like anxiety or depression, and more of labeling. Because I just talking to the attorney yesterday, the symptoms of depression and the symptoms of anxiety can be like really or easily overlooked or undermined because they're simple symptoms, like sleepiness or like insomnia. You simply just can't go to sleep. And so when he was at least speaking on his symptoms when it came to his experiences with mental illness, I was like, those sound like the things that I'm going through now, just in high school, like having trouble going to sleep.
Yeah,
um,
one of the
and
tough things about
yeah.
mental health is that we don't have a blood test for anxiety or depression. All I have is I've written instruments, or I have an intake interview, so I can say for depression. Look, honestly, my personal way of diagnosing depression is, do you have an absence of appropriate anger, and is there a dismantling of your self-esteem? Now that might seem like an odd way to diagnose depression, but personally for me, that's my understanding of depression. With anxiety, it's the tricky thing is that if you look for actual sort of physical symptoms, often the symptoms are contradictory. It's either, oh, I sleep all the time, or I can't sleep. And both of those could be symptoms of depression, right? Oh, I eat nonstop, or I can't eat. Both of those could be symptoms of anxiety or depression. It can be a little tricky. Basically, what you're getting is disturbance of normal behavior patterns, but they can go either way to I don't sleep, or all I can do is sleep. So that's why it can be very hard to diagnose based on that stuff. I try to look more at how do you feel about yourself. And honestly, with depression especially, the easiest way to tell if someone's depressed is you say, are you angry? A depressed person will say, well, only at myself, maybe. And if you say, well, how do you feel about yourself? They'll say, I just don't think anyone should have to be around me. I just don't like who I am. I don't feel like I'm a good person or something. And bingo, you can tell you've got depression. And I can get into the why that is true. It has to do with the nature of how depression works. And with anxiety, it's look, if someone's having a real anxiety attack, they're going to have racing heart rate, breathing, usually, all the kind of respiratory stuff. And sometimes in the GI system, you've got a very upset stomach. Sometimes you have that feeling that you're having a heart attack or you just can't catch your breath. I mean, anyone who's ever had an anxiety attack, it's pretty hard to miss. Most people don't miss that they're anxious. They can tell that they're anxious. Although, sometimes you don't own it. It's like if you're going into a bar or a party or some social situation, and to try to meet somebody, a romantic partner or something. And if you're having these symptoms, you may not own them. You may just say, "Oh, everyone here has an attitude. I don't want to be here. I'm going to leave." And what's really going on, of course, is you're anxious and you're removing yourself from what's causing the anxiety, but you're doing it unconsciously with the excuse, the defense. "Oh, I don't really like these people. It's not going to work." All these predictions. But really what's going on is if you could own the anxiety, this is what I work with my patients all the time on this, they say, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm sweating and my pulse is racing. I must be anxious. Why don't I own that, make it conscious, address it by slowing down, maybe playing some mantras through my head, some soothing counter thoughts, and saying, okay, I'm in a state of anxiety right now, but I still am here because I want to meet somebody. So why don't I try to use some tricks, just ask somebody a question, introduce myself, get them talking, try to get through the evening despite the anxiety."
Right. So then can it be stated that when it comes to at least for you and your years of experience when it comes to psychotherapy, and when it comes to diagnosing, it's a matter of kind of seeing if their mannerisms are polar to their natural disposition, like if they're happy, productive, and then all of a sudden it's hard for them to sleep and they're not as productive. Maybe that's a sign, as well as their self-perception.
Yeah, with anxiety, it's different than depression. With anxiety, it's less about diagnosing it and more about understanding what's triggering it. You tend to do what's called cognitive behavioral therapy with anxiety. The notion is that all anxiety is triggered by a predictive thought, cognition. And if you can identify that cognition, then you're really all set. So, which sounds easy, right? Well, the question is, what is it that you're predicting is going to happen, this worst possible outcome, which is then triggering the emotional response? So I'm walking into this party and I think everyone there is going to reject me and they're going to be hostile and uninterested in me and no one's going to like me. And so that's the cognition. That's the predictive cognition. Okay. That is triggering all of this fear. Right? Because that's terrifying to me. That's the worst possible outcome, right? I don't want to be at a party where nobody likes me and I'm awkward and I'm the wallflower, rejected and feeling ugly and unlikable and all that, right? So that's when it triggers this, the interesting thing about anxiety is it's a very primitive thing. It's really located, in the sort of center of the brain. Lizards get anxious. It's the fight or flight instinct that comes from a predator being near, So if there's a predator near you, say you're, I don't know, a little lizard or something, and there's something that's going to eat you nearby, whatever eats lizards, you start to you go into the state of heightened vigilance, which essentially is the pulse rate and the breathing and all these things in your body are altered, your gut shuts down or whatever, and it's evolutionary, really. You're preparing to try to escape from a danger, And believe it or not, that's the root of anxiety, is that very primitive system is going into play. So the notion is to try to, sort of unpack that. Well, what is the predator? The predator is my fear of rejection, Well, that's not so scary, is it? And then what you do in cognitive behavioral theory is once you have an idea what the fear is that's triggering the response, is then you reality test it. You say, well, is that really likely? Am I really going to be unable? Even if the worst possible circumstance, I go into this party and no one likes me, I can survive that, right? I can go home and, I don't know, hang out with my dog and watch a movie or something. It's not the end of the world, right? And you calm yourself. So you formulate a soothing counter thought, essentially, to that initial cognition. So, the initial cognition is, I'm going to be rejected and I won't be able to survive it. You reality test it and you think, well, that's not true. And then you come up with the soothing counter thought, which is, I'll be just fine. I like myself. I know who I am. I'm a nice person and people are lucky to meet me. I'm not for everybody, but there are worse people out there. And, if you don't like me, okay, I'll go home and I'll, call a good friend, or I'm okay. I'm intact in myself. So that's how you deal with anxiety. It's sort of in a very shortened form here.
Okay. All right. This is actually um, interesting coming from, because it's one thing to hear from an attorney on the topic of wellness in big law, but then there's an entirely different thing to have someone who's been in it professionally in psychotherapy and in law. And so we'll get into just that wellness in big law with this next question, uh, which is what would you say it is about law schools and just the legal profession in general that leads to quite a number of individuals who enter a career in law and then develop distress or anxiety or depression?
Well, it's interesting. I've gone on the record as saying that if I had to design an environment to create anxiety and depression, I would probably design the legal world, the law firm and the law school, because they really are almost designed to create exactly the problem we have. I mean, we can start with depression. Uh, you know, Depression is really triggered when you're very angry at how you're being treated, but you have no sort of right to the anger. So you turn the anger inward and kind of tear yourself up. And what happens in law school is that you're made to compete. And they're usually high achievers who go to law school, and for the first time, it's all these high achievers, in the room. And they're also pleasers. They tend to be very good students because they want to please the teacher. They're the teacher's pets in the front of the class who, have their arm up screaming, call on me, call on me. That's lawyers. And what happens is they can't please, that they find that it's incredibly competitive, and lawyers themselves are very competitive. I mean, every lawyer seems to be competing with every other lawyer. I mean, you talk about it being adversarial, but I mean, it's, one lawyer said to me, Will, it's not just the adversary, it's not just the other side that's adversarial. It's my own partners, my own colleagues, the judge. I mean, it just seems like my client. I mean, everyone's an adversary. They're all on me. Everyone's competing with me or tearing me up or something. So, a lot of lawyers, I guess, or law students, they get to school and they realize that they can't please. It's very hard to be at the top of the class. It's an endless pyramid law. I mean, I was at the top of my class at NYU, but I didn't get into Yale. And if you're the top of your class at Yale, oh, but I didn't get the Supreme Court clerkship. And if you get the Supreme Court clerkship, it's like, oh, no, you're not, I don't know, a senator or something. I mean, it just never ends. Everyone is always competing. And so you always feel a little bit like you're failing in some competition. And so that's going to create depression because you have no one to blame for it. You can't be angry at anybody. And of course you can be angry. I mean, really, what a ridiculous system to just have everyone endlessly competing with everyone else, and no one ever stopped me to say, hey, great job, you're terrific, right? So that creates the depression and the anxiety. I mean, it's you're given more work than you can do, and it's all high pressure, and you feel like you're failing because you're competing with everybody else, and it's just a real pressure cooker. And so it creates anxiety. So you end up, with heightened levels. It's weird how it starts right from the law school years. All the studies seem to show it. You end up with this anxiety and depression.
Well, how did you manage, Mr. Beyerhofer? I mean, you attended Harvard University and New York University, so you were in it. Especially the competition is on an entirely different level. So how did you maintain focus and?
Oh, I was a loser. I was at the bottom of the food chain.
Oh no!
Look, I had a friend at S&C who was Yale and Yale. Pretty top of his class. I think he was at Wachtell Lipton, which was one of the best law firms on the planet. And then he came to Sullivan and Cromwell, which I'll modestly aver is one of the best law firms on the planet, at least one of the very top places. And he was doing tax, which is one of the toughest, areas of the field. And I remember him walking into my office and saying, Will, I'm just not very good. And I thought, good heavens, man. I mean, he was also a concert pianist and a piano technician. So, I mean, I remember thinking to myself, wow, if he's, getting dismantled, in a way, in a way I had this flash and I thought, oh, this is what's happening to me, because I had thought of myself as something of a superstar, and I felt like I couldn't do anything right. They really, it's so competitive. You've got the best of the best, and you're just endlessly competing against everyone. And it's really hard not to, just be one of these bruised, frankly, I lasted about 2.5 years at that law firm and kind of had my ass handed to me. And, the funny thing is I decided when I was a psychotherapist to write honestly about it because I felt someone should tell the truth. And I thought I've got nothing to lose here. I'm not a lawyer anymore and I'll just tell the truth. And what amazed me was the response I got to my columns was so powerful. I was just, deluged with letters and emails and texts and writing. Everyone was contacting me. All these patients suddenly wanted to see me, who were lawyers, and they were all saying, "Me too. I went through this too." I wrote one piece, and the name of the piece was "I Suck at Law." That was the headline. And
Wow.
and I wrote it because I just wanted to say, look, I've been getting a lot of mail from people
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, you're just a loser. You just couldn't compete. You were just no good. That's all this is. Stop complaining." And I said, okay, I was a loser. I couldn't compete. I wasn't very good at it. And then, I wrote about it. I said, the reason I went into law was I wanted to please my mom. I was a gay kid, and damn it, I needed to make her happy, and so I went to law school. She wouldn't leave me alone about it. And also, the plan was to monetize a humanities degree. I'm an English major. What the hell am I supposed to do? I need to make a pile of money, right? Because I'm so smart and went to Harvard. So, how do you make a lot of money? Well, you go to law school. I mean, the old days, you became a college professor, but, by the 1990s, getting a PhD seemed like a path straight off a cliff. So I thought, well, I'll get a JD and I'll sell out and make money, And, I never really bothered to stop and say, well, what is law again? I mean, what do lawyers do? And when I got to law school, I took civil procedure, good old Civ Pro. And I realized that I didn't want to be a litigator because I hated procedure. It was like all these minute things that you had to fight over, like, venue and jurisdictional issues and just all this kind of really complicated stuff. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to be in the courtroom making my case. I don't want to be arguing over whether this courtroom or that judge or, whether I have a right to appeal or this nonsense. And so anyway, I thought, all right, I'll do the other stuff. I'll do corporate law. And if you asked me at the time, what is corporate law, corporations, all these classes, I probably would have said something like, oh, you're just a businessman, but you call yourself a lawyer, I really had no idea. In fact, what it is it's transactional law. It's negotiating contracts, drafting contracts, that kind of thing. I didn't know what I was getting into. And that's one of the things about law that has resulted in so much human suffering, so much mental breakdown, as you would put it. Is that so many people go into it who don't belong there. Law is something that people who do it, who love it, find very satisfying. They flourish. But people who don't love it, shouldn't go into it because you end up with a whole lot of debt doing a job that feels like it's someone else's job. I mean, look, if they paid a whole lot of money, to be a hairdresser and everybody suddenly wanted to be a hairdresser because it was overpaid, there'd be a whole lot of people getting bad haircuts, and a whole lot of people who really were pretty miserable.
Yeah.
But there'd also be a few people loving it, right? Because they're hairdressers, right? You have to realize, I guess, or, everyone should accept that a job isn't work. A job isn't a job. A job is a role in society that somebody did, and other people saw him doing it or her and decided, oh, I want to do that too. That calls out to me. That feels like the work that I want to do with my life, my time on earth, And so they became the tinsmiths, and they became the shoemakers, and they became the farmers, or whatever. Whatever your thing is in life that you want to do with your life that calls to you, maybe you want to own a surf shop or maybe a bakery or something. And so they all kind of made that. In the Middle Ages, you had guilds, of people. And so, the way to find your work really is to find the people that are like you. Like when I'm around therapists, I think, my people, my guild, right?
Yeah.
These are my peeps. I mean, I sit around with a bunch of kooky people who love to talk about it's always these women with big jewelry and guys.
Yes.
I'm at home. When I was with lawyers, I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't belong.
Yeah. Okay. But you know what? Okay, so you said, if let's see. At least when it comes to law, you have to really love it. But
any job,
yes,
you have to love it. Otherwise, you're going to have mental health problems. That's it.
But for you to have gone into psychotherapy, do you think you would have still been where you are if you hadn't gone into corporate law?
You were asking the toughest question that I ever get asked, and I get asked it a fair amount, which is, Will, do you regret going to law school and becoming a lawyer? And it's very hard to say that because, all right, look, it was a waste of my time. It was a terrible experience in big law. Yes, of course I regret it. It was awful. Why did I do that? I spent all this money, got into debt, and had to go to law school and then work at this firm that I didn't fit in and had a terrible time, depression, anxiety. Yeah. All right. On the other hand, I got out. I worked in the book business. There was some time between. I worked at Barnes and Noble. I was a manager of marketing for them and worked in the book business. And then I went back to school and got my MSW, and I worked with gay men, mostly men of color, who were mostly newly diagnosed with HIV. So that was actually the population I worked with initially in a hospital setting, clinic. So, I never intended to work with lawyers, but, I somehow or other, after I published my first book, it got out that I was a lawyer and I was a therapist, and I got publicized, and I started writing about my experience in law, and I ended up creating this whole practice and publishing books about it. And I created essentially a new field, a new profession, which is being a psychotherapist who kind of specializes in helping lawyers. And, do I regret that? No, it's wonderfully satisfying. I love the fact that I can sit down with a lawyer and they immediately sense something different. They're like, I'm with a psychotherapist. I've had good therapists, but there's something different about this guy. He's like, I don't have to explain things to him. He gets it. We're looking at each other. I mean, some of them, honestly, they mention a lawyer and I'll say, yeah, I did deal with that guy too. I mean, we literally know the same people, or I'll start talking about doing, I don't know, fund formation. I'll go, I worked on this.
Yes.
I bet you're up all night the weekend before, they launch it. Oh, those closings. Yeah, I used to do closing tables with things like that. And we're laughing and we're sharing, and I'm thinking, this is really special. And I'm finding a way to, speed the process, put them at ease, make them feel understood, which is so important to psychotherapy being useful and efficient and really working and helping people. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I do it again, but I guess there's a reason I'm like the only big law lawyer psychotherapist there is. I mean, I know there might be another one or two out there, but I mean, it's a pretty kooky career path, you have to admit, right? I mean, it's kind of nuts. But anyway, I fell into it, and I guess in hindsight, no regrets. I mean, I love doing it anyway. So I guess what I'm really saying is I landed on my feet and I'm not complaining.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is my last question to you, Mr. Meyerhoff. And am I saying your last name right?
It's Meyerhofer, actually.
Meyerhofer.
Thank you. But no one ever pronounces it right. So in my own family, they say Meyerhofer or whatever. So it doesn't really matter.
Meyerhofer.
Best jab at it. My Swiss grandfather would say Meyerhofer.
Meyerhofer. Okay, because I people say Mendez is like, oh my gosh. So I just wanted to ask, but. This last question I have for you is on behalf of all the A personalities out there like myself who are specifically in high school, never mind middle school, although we have some listeners from there as well, but who are pretty sure of the career that they want to go into. But when it comes to practically leaving teenhood and the roof of our parents in a matter of 9 months, we're kind of fearful of after college and after master's and after graduate school, like where life will turn and where life will take us. What is your token of advice to us? Because you just listening to your story here, you went from law, you went from law to therapy, and then just reading your story, you eventually found your specialty. But that took time. And so with that, just give us like a token of advice that you would give to us high schoolers bound to leave.
Yeah, in a weird way, it parallels, how do I find a husband or how do I find a wife, because I mean, it's I'll tell you, or even how to find a best friend, I mean, if somebody asks me, how do you find a best friend? I'd say, it's going to take a while and you're going to have to be patient with it. And you're going to have to really trust your heart, and you're going to have to be willing to realize that you're going to grow and change, So it's like that. It's an organic thing. You can't fake it. What you're really doing is looking in your soul and asking, who am I? Because the work you do is a reflection. You need to know who you are before you know what you want to do. I'll also say that I'll warn you, man, the 20s are a rough decade. And they're a rough decade because essentially you're a child. And children, do well because they do what they're told. That's what a good kid is. A good kid does what he's told,
Yes.
But a good adult doesn't. It doesn't work that way.
Well,
you have to stop doing what you're told. And in a weird way, the sooner you do it, and this doesn't mean acting out or being a rebel or anything. It just means listening to yourself, your own heart, and giving that, some significance. Also, you're going to get praised, and you're going to be in this artificial world of the school, where you get A's and your teachers like you and you do well in assignments. And then it's like you get to graduation from college, And unless you go straight into grad school, which is why people run into grad school and particularly into law school, it's almost like they dump you into just boom, land on your butt, you know? I mean, when you graduate from college, it's like, hooray, you're the most exciting person in the whole world. You're wonderful. Here's your funny hat, and here's a diploma, and we love you, and hooray, and and then 5 minutes later, it's like, what are you gonna do? Sit on that couch for the rest of your life? You got a job, you know? And it's like, well, what's a job? What am I supposed to do? You know? And it's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? You know? And that right there, that's a very tough moment for everyone. That is, I work with so many young people right at that moment. It's like, hang on, I'm a superstar. My parents love me. I'm their little boy, their little girl, you know? And all of a sudden, suddenly you're that lump on the couch. And like, well, what are you going to do? Live with us? Get out of here, you know? And it's like, well, no one showed me, you know, the practicalities of that. Like, how am I supposed to, you know? I mean, don't you wonder? I mean, I did when I was in high school. I guess if I ever stopped to think about it, or in college, you know, like, what comes after this? Like, you know, how do I suddenly go from here to there? You know, like, how do I go from kid to adult with job and responsibility?
Yes.
Like, how do I get to where people respect me and I have authority and I'm running things? And the answer to that is tough. You know, it's kind of like, how do I meet a spouse who loves me and I love, that I want to be with the rest of my life? It's like, it's going to take some time. It's going to be the toughest thing you ever did. And you're going to have to do a lot of the exact opposite of what you do in school. Instead of listening to a teacher, you're going to have to really listen to yourself. And you know, there are tricks here. Like, if you get real excited about something, if you just crack a smile and say, oh boy, I want to do that. You know, I want that person's job. You know, that's important. That's a really important thing. The other thing is you need to network. You need to, I'm sorry, I love to read and I'm a reader, but all the information you need to find out what you want to do with your life is not in books. It's in people. You need to meet the people and you need to walk up to them and say, hey, you know, it seems what you do is really exciting and neat. How'd you get into it? And what do you really do? And how do you like it? You know, and most people, if you ask them that, they'll be sort of flattered and they'll say, wow, okay, wow, they like what I do and they're interested in it. Yeah, I'd love to talk about what I do. You know, I'll talk your ear off if you want to find out what it's like to be a psychotherapist. You know, and I do get these calls all the time. People, you know, just reach out and say, I'm thinking about being a psychotherapist. And I say, all right, I'll talk to you about it.
Absolutely. Okay.
And you know, and that is, I mean, I don't think you really get that in a book. You got to talk to an actual person who does that job. And then you almost like sense it. Like, you look at each other like, are you a therapist? Like, I do that when I talk to people like this. I think, am I talking to another therapist or not? You know, and sometimes it's like, you can kind of tell that they're not really, it's not, you know, I mean, they're a wonderful person, but, and other people you think, yeah, you're a therapist, aren't you? This is going to work, you know? And that's really what it is. It's built into you. You don't fight it, you know? I wasn't a lawyer. I was kidding myself. So I don't know what you're going to be, and I don't know who you're going to spend your life with, but, you know, there's time. And I guess I just urge you to kind of listen to your heart a little. You know, it's you know, look, you know, it's kind of like your favorite flavor of ice cream, you know? I mean, I can't tell you what your favorite flavor is. I know I look at rum raisin and I think, you know, that's a weird flavor, but I like rum raisin. And, you know, you're going to look at tangerine and think, I'm going to order that, you know? But, you know, there's places where there's 42 flavors or whatever, you know? No one can tell you that. You're going to have to taste a lot of ice cream to figure it out. That's what this is like.
Well, I sincerely appreciate the time that you've lended over to me this evening. I have I don't know why I did it right after school, scheduling back-to-back interviews. But this topic was one that I was especially passionate about, especially because law is the profession that I want to pursue, and to speak to lawyers, either former lawyers or active lawyers, about this topic. The fact that you all are transparent and courageous enough to speak on it is admirable. And again, I just thank you for joining me this evening.
Well, thank you. And there's some wonderful lawyers out there. You know, I mean, look, I personally didn't turn out that I was a lawyer, but it doesn't mean I don't admire and enjoy, you know, a lot of terrific people out there, you know, and all aspects of law, the people who do tax, the people, and there's a lot of law out there that people don't even realize people are doing, you know, very specialized areas. I mean, we all want to be that civil rights attorney writing that brief, arguing for justice, you know, but there's an awful lot of other stuff that happens that, you know, maybe you're not so aware of. I mean, someone who draws up your will for you, or someone
Well, yeah.
or helps you to get your corporation off the ground, that company that's your dream, and they do all the thinking, and they look out for you and make sure that you can get your company started. I mean, that's an important job too. And those clients are a patent lawyer. I was just talking to a patent lawyer a couple hours ago, and he's real excited working with inventors and helping them get their inventions.
Yes.
Right. So it's a great field. It's just it has to be for you. Meet some lawyers, talk to them about it, and really look in your heart and say, am I romanticizing this, or am I really looking at the reality of it? And I really feel drawn to it. And this is something I would do.
Yes. Well, yeah. Just give yourself a little reality check on the career of your choice. Yeah, and especially that networking part that you mentioned prior. I know that's helped me tremendously cross out at least different types of laws. Like, oh, wait a minute, I have a certain lifestyle that I want to maintain. I don't think that's.
Yeah, look, one of the realities of law is that, unfortunately, I mean, at least at the big firms, the hours are very rough. You have to really love those hours. And everyone just sees the money, and they don't realize that there's a cost to that, which is that it can be a very rough environment. I was there till 11 p.m. every night. Think about a job where I go out and I told you I love music, I love the arts, I love the theater, I love dance. I couldn't do any of that when I was a lawyer, and that was one of the reasons it didn't work for me. I need my evenings. That keeps me sane.
Right. Well, I understand that. Well, again, I thank you for joining me this evening, and I'll make sure to send you the edited version of our interview. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. Have a great evening, and glad we pulled it off.
Right, even through the lag at the beginning, but I thank you.
I was just sitting here typing up case notes, so I figured, I'll give it.
Well, look at that. Good use of time.
Exactly. You give a therapist some time, they type notes. That's what we do.
All right then.
All right. Thank you. Any way I can be of help, just let me know. With edits or overdubs or I don't know, anything that might come up, just let me know.
Will do. Absolutely. I now have your email, so we'll definitely stay in contact.
Okay. Thanks a million.
Thank you.